Russian forces in Ukraine have lost 38 artillery systems and 12 armored personnel vehicles in the past 24 hours, Kyiv's military said on Thursday, as their counteroffensive ground on in the south and east of the country. Moscow's armed forces have lost a total of 6,375 artillery systems and 8,962 armored personnel vehicles since February 24, 2022, Ukraine's general staff said in a post on social media on Thursday. Russia's defense ministry said on the same day that Ukraine's military had lost 6,571 field artillery systems and mortar guns. Moscow didn't offer a breakdown of reported Ukrainian military vehicle losses, but added in an updated tally that Kyiv had lost 12,206 tanks and armored combat vehicles in the course of the war. Newsweek couldn't independently verify the battlefield reports, or the losses reported by Moscow and Kyiv. The Ukrainian General Staff and Russia's Defense Ministry have been contacted for comment. In the months since Ukraine launched its counteroffensive, artillery has only become more important as Kyiv makes creeping advances in the eastern Donetsk region and along the front lines in Zaporizhia. Kyiv and Moscow are locked in an attrition battle, where firepower is crucial, Frederick Mertens, a strategic analyst with the Hague Center for Security Studies, previously told Newsweek. Artillery is king in such battles and is responsible for most of the losses an army inflicts on its enemy, he said. Around 80% of the casualties on both sides of the front lines are down to artillery, Dan Rice, a former advisor to Ukraine's top soldier, General Valery Zaluzhny, told Newsweek last week. There were 26 combat clashes along the front over the past day, Ukraine's general staff said on Thursday, adding that more than 110 settlements in regions across the south, east, and north of the country came under artillery fire. Ukrainian forces repelled Russian attacks around Klishivka and Andriivka, two Donetsk villages Ukraine said earlier this month it had recaptured. The settlements lie to the southwest of the battered eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, which Russia has controlled since May. A Russian artillery strike carried out by its southern grouping of forces killed around 30 Ukrainian fighters around Klishivka, Russia's defense ministry said on Thursday, adding that 2 tanks and several armored vehicles were also taken out around Klishivka. But on Wednesday, the British Defense Ministry indicated that Moscow's forces in eastern Ukraine are unlikely to be able to launch a concerted new Russian offensive in the coming weeks. The Kremlin's newly formed 25th Combined Arms Army is deployed piecemeal along the hotspots of fighting in eastern Ukraine to reinforce the overstretched line, the UK Defense Ministry said in an intelligence update posted to social media. With these units scattered across the front line, a concerted new Russian offensive is less likely over the coming weeks, the ministry added. This assessment is likely accurate, and Russia has been unable to launch any serious counterattacks in the face of Kyiv's advances throughout Ukraine's summer months, according to Nick Reynolds, a research fellow for land warfare at the Royal United Services Institute defense think tank. Russia needs to hold the line for now through such piecemeal deployments, Reynolds told Newsweek. Although Moscow is not in the best position, in terms of equipment and personnel losses, rotating troops and attrition, he added, the Kremlin is still likely hoping to wear down Ukraine through a drawn-out conflict. Russian failures in the past few months don't necessarily mean Moscow won't be able to launch offensive actions later on, he said. Ukraine is gradually gaining ground in its punishing counteroffensive efforts, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said during a visit to Kyiv on Thursday. Every meter that Ukrainian forces regain is a meter that Russia loses, the NATO chief said. Ukraine's southern counteroffensive isn't one major attack. It's at least 3, and one of them isn't even in the south. It's in the east, on the flanks of Bakhmut, that iconic city that Russian forces spent a year, and thousands of lives, capturing in a campaign that culminated in May. That attack is succeeding, but at a high price to Kyiv's forces. A Ukrainian assault on Russian positions outside Andriivka, just south of Klishivka on the southern edge of Bakhmut, apparently failed on or around September 24, and left behind no fewer than 8 infantry fighting vehicles, including 5 BMP-2s and 3 new Polish-made Rosomak Wolverines. It's unclear which brigade the vehicles belong to. Possibly the reformed 22nd Mechanized Brigade, which also operates an eclectic mix of PT-91, T-72AMT and T-72 Ural tanks. The strategic dynamics around Bakhmut are simple. As the Russians deploy more and more of their forces to the south in an effort to blunt the Ukrainian attack along the 50-mile axis threading from Robotyne through Bakhmut to Russian-occupied Melitopol, the relative paucity of Russian forces in the east represents an opportunity for the Ukrainians to regain territory they lost in the first year and a half of Russia's wider war on Ukraine. In the 15 weeks since the counteroffensive kicked off, Ukrainian brigades have advanced several miles north and south of Bakhmut. Especially south. It helps that Kyiv has assigned one of its most aggressive brigades, the 3rd Assault Brigade, to the sector south of Bakhmut. But the Russians have dug in, and the terrain features include wide open fields that the attacking Ukrainians must cross at enormous risk to people and equipment. If the 3rd Brigade's successful assaults are the reward of the Ukrainians' eastern counteroffensive, failed assaults like that around Andriivka are the cost. Those wheeled Wolverine IFVs the 22nd Brigade or a sister unit lost outside Andriivka on or around September 24 are the first of the type that Kyiv's forces have ridden off since the Polish-made vehicles began arriving this spring. The Wolverine is fast, with a top speed of 60 miles per hour thanks to its 500 horsepower diesel engine. And its 30mm autocannon, the same gun that arms the U.S. Army's Europe-based Strykers, is a killer. A Wolverine has 3 crew and seats 8 infantry. If the vehicle has a flaw, it's that the Polish army initially insisted on an amphibious capability for its own Wolverines. In other words, the Wolverine had to be light enough to swim short distances like a very slow, awkward boat. That meant reducing armor protection. Losing 3 Wolverines in a single assault surely stings for the Ukrainians. It's perhaps cold comfort that many more Wolverines are coming. The Polish government back in April pledged to Ukraine 200 Wolverines, eventually making the 25-ton, 8-wheel IFVs the most numerous Western-style fighting vehicles in the Ukrainian inventory alongside the 200 M2 tracked fighting vehicles and 200 Stryker-wheeled IFVs that the United States so far has pledged to Ukraine. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported on September 28 that Russia has lost 277,320 troops since the beginning of the full-scale invasion on February 24 last year. The figure includes an additional 330 casualties reported over the past day,